Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Game video, once again, we're going to be discussing AMD. Rumours are very persistent with AMD at the moment, whether it's Polaris 12, whether it's the Vega lineup, or of course, up until recently, Ryzen 7's performance, but now the chips are out. We have more Ryzen rumours, but this time, not from Ryzen 5, but they continue from the 16 core part, which supposedly AMD are working on. So for those of you who don't know, of course the Ryzen 7 has 8 cores, 16 threads thanks to SMT. But rumours are that AMD are working on a HEDT platform. This is for folks who are perhaps wanting to do a lot of virtual machine work, 3D rendering, video editing. You get the types of folks I'm talking about. Now this platform is really aimed at competing with the market that Intel currently have, well, basically dominated for some time. And while the market is fairly small, at least in compared to the people who are buying, let's say, the i5 6600K or the i7 7700K, they are still a lot of folks who want this level of performance. So obviously AMD are fairly keen to jump onto it. And that's where the rumours are today. Supposedly this platform is going to be known as X399 as well as the X390, and we'll go into some chipset diagrams in just a moment, but from what we can understand, making sense, it's going to be a Nepal's based server cut down model, and it is going to have quad channel memory support, which once again, that makes some sense given the fact that we have double the number of processors. It would make an awful lot of sense to drastically increase the memory bandwidth available for those Ryzen CPUs. And from what we can understand, Ryzen does like memory bandwidth quite a lot. We'll get more into that in just a second. The engineering samples, at least from these rumours, are 180 watts, and that's 16 cores and run at 3.1 GHz base, boosting up to 3.6 GHz. So essentially you can think of this as bolting two Ryzen 7 1700s on the same chip. Now likelihood is that this is not going to be the only part that's released. I mean, it just wouldn't make sense. We can probably assume there's going to be like a 12 core model, which we can perhaps say that that would be a lot of logic. So while the clock speeds of these processors aren't necessarily conducive with gaming, they can of course be used for gaming, and that would appear to be, well, confirmed by the motherboard leaks. Now, of course, they're not actually the leaks of the motherboard images, but what we do have instead is diagrams of the boards. And it's rather interesting because, first of all, ASUS are adding Aura chipsets, and that is essentially an RGB lighting controller. The other thing that's interesting is that the diagrams themselves are colorized. For those who don't know, first of all, the colouring job is a little, well, iffy. So it looks like it's done in like Photoshop in just a few minutes. So it looks to me like either the leaker did it or it was, well, a fake. But we just don't know. But let's assume, for the sake of this video, that it is genuine. What we can notice is a couple of things. First of all, it has AM44 written on it as the socket type, which I guess technically could be a screw-up or a typo, but it would make sense for it not to be AM4, because obviously, well, you know, you'd assume it would not be the same socket. And the actual CPU itself, the motherboard itself, is actually ginormous. We're looking at a processor which has a ludicrous number of PCIe lanes. It looks like there's 44. And they are all directly connected into the CPU, which is kind of bonkers. Now, a couple of little things, a couple of few caveats, if you will. First one, if you are thinking of just saying, well, I'm going to wait on this now and I'm just going to buy this rather than, you know, the Ryzen 7s that are currently available, if the clock speed is accurate and it only goes to like 3.6 GHz for boost, obviously overclocking is we just don't know yet, then you might still be better off, if gaming is your primary gig, to buy like a Ryzen 7 or a Kaby Lake based system. At the end of the day, clock speed still matters. However, this market is still going to be very lucrative for AMD, there's no doubt about it. I'm actually getting quite a few messages for people who are asking me to do Ryzen based tests for, let's say, usages of video editing at the same time of doing 3D rendering. And this could actually be quite you know, normal for artists. Let's say you're running Blender. Let's just, you know, not do a ridiculous scenario at all. Let's say that you're doing a lot of 3D modeling work, so perhaps you're rendering something specific in the background with that, plus as well, maybe you're doing a little bit of video encoding, and also you still want to be productive, so maybe you're using ZBrush, or perhaps you're using Photoshop, and that would be my phone because I'm an idiot and forgot to put it on silent even though I thought I did. And you're starting to do that work, and yeah, you just kind of get that workflow going because you've got so many processor cores. On the other hand, if you've only got, let's say, half that number or a quarter of that number of threads available, then obviously things are a little bit different. You quite simply just do not have the ability to continue working, or rendering is going to be a lot slower. A small aside, just for me, first of all, I think I've got the early stages of a cold, and it's kind of starting to turn a bit nasty, so that's great. That's going to slow me down a little bit. My content is going to be a bit slower. AIMers will continue. I'm just finishing a review. I've done all of the benchmarking for a GTX 1070 amp, which of course is for Zotac, and I also have a Skylake-E Z270 board from MSI. It's kind of funny, they've asked me instead to jump another board, which is the their X390 board, ahead of the queue, but we already built this Skylake system. So because I built the Skylake system, I decided to at least get some of the BIOS images and stuff done. So that's done, and now I'm going to work on their thing. So basically, for folks, I think I mentioned this on Facebook, I'm going to be shifting a lot of the Ryzen coverage onto the MSI board, which is coming with a 1700 along with the Wraith cooler, just because I think it will be a nice point of comparison versus our own board, which, as I said before, is an Asus X370 Prime Pro. And I think it will just be nice because MSI have provided quite a lot of information on getting the best out of the board, so we can start doing some comparisons on that. So that I'm hoping to get up over the next couple of days, along with some DDR4 memory, which I've been trying to review, but it's just been an absolute pain in the ass to get running at 3000 MHz with the board we're running with Ryzen. And so what we're going to do instead is get that running on the Skylake board that we were given, and basically things are just a bit nuts at the moment. So my content's going to be a bit slower over the next week or so. But I think that's better, so that I can get all of this backlog over and done with, because quite frankly it's getting ridiculous. We have about 4 graphics cards I need to finish benchmarking, one entire PC system which we're going backwards and forwards on with the vendor to kind of get the last bits and pieces done. We've also got, of course, the motherboard and CPU from MSI with Ryzen, as well as for Skylake, and a few other bits and pieces, so I just want to kind of get rid of some of this backlog. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.